No one needs another true crime podcast in their life, but we know you want one. Melissa and I are best friends, and we wanted more too.
When Whitney and I couldn't find exactly what we wanted, we created our own. Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet embraces the grim realities of the world with a side of wine. Don't drink wine? That's okay too.
Over the last 3 seasons, our true crime journey has evolved from being a listener like you to becoming advocates. Each week, we cover an unsolved case in a different state in an effort to create new leads to help advance the case.
To take advocacy one step further, we also travel to locations to help families of those who have gone missing or have been murdered.
Whether it's a foot search or passing out flyers, we will be there, no matter where,
no matter who.
We invite you to join us, so pop a cork and grab a glass, because we have work to do.
Cults, Crimes, and Cabernet is available wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective,
and Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm your host, Mike Morford. In this episode, we'll be discussing the tragic death of a beloved 51-year-old mother who died in her apartment in a fire that was deliberately set. We'll dive into this case after some quick housekeeping. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a minute to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderInMyFam, or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to support this show through a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Murder in My Family. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include early access to ad-free episodes of the show, plus bonus content not heard in regular episodes. Support may also include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/The Murder in My Family. In each episode, I'll give shout-outs to any new supporters. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note. Please consider supporting any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. On the morning of July 20th, 2020, a fire broke out in a Reno, Nevada apartment complex located at 340 Broadway Boulevard, and it had deadly consequences. At 5:30 a.m., confused residents awoke to find the building on fire, and they scrambled to escape the flames. Several people were injured, but managed to escape. 2 people, however, were not so fortunate and perished as a result of the fire. Dead following the tragic fire were 70-year-old Catherine White and 51-year-old Diana Engstrom. In this episode, I'll be joined by Diana's daughter, Nancy. From the beginning, it was clear to investigators that the fire wasn't an accident. The Arson Investigation Unit and Robbery Homicide were both called to the scene. One man, a former firefighter, was instrumental in their investigation, telling authorities that he had seen the smoke early in the morning after dropping his wife off at the airport, so he went searching out the source of the fire. Once he got near the complex, he saw a man carrying a gas can run to a parked car, get in, and then speed off. The man followed the fleeing car west on I-80 and called 911. Police followed and pulled the car over. 31-year-old Brian Bandy was arrested in connection with the fire. He had thrown the gas can out the window during the pursuit. A female acquaintance who was driving the vehicle, who some sources say is his wife and others say his girlfriend, was questioned by police, and she described a very tense morning. Bandy had woken her up early that morning by putting her in a headlock and then ordered her to drive to a gas station. According to KOLO-TV, he told her, "I have to do this before it gets light." He also instructed her specifically to drive to that complex on Broadway Boulevard. He went on to tell her, "The world is a mess and I need help." And right after that, he got out of the car and started the fire. As he got back in the car, he threatened the woman with a knife and ordered her to drive him to California. She told investigators that a woman who had lived in the apartment building owed Bandy $400, and she felt that's why he targeted that address. But it's unclear who the person was Bandy targeted inside the building. What is clear is that several residents lost their belongings, their pets, and some of them their lives, and they didn't even know this man. They were sleeping in their own homes, where they should have been safe, unaware that someone was dousing the building in gasoline and about to start the fatal fire. Bandy was charged with arson in the first degree and false imprisonment with the use of a deadly weapon. Later the same day, he was charged with 2 counts of open murder. For these 2 murders, he faced life in prison without the possibility of parole. In January 2022, Bandy pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder with the agreement that the prosecution would drop the arson and false imprisonment charges. It looks like Bandy hasn't changed his behavior behind bars, though. His record at the Washoe County Detention Facility lists 4 charges of battery by a prisoner and 1 count of damaging jail property in excess of $5,000. Diana Engstrom's daughter, Nancy, described her to me as the kind of person who loved to help others. She made sandwiches that she passed out to people that she saw living with no homes, and even asked them their favorite type of food, and she spent her time looking for places that would have meals that people liked. She was someone who was willing to give the shirt off her back, and just as Diana went all out for strangers, she also went out of the way to help her friends and family as well. If you had something you were passionate about, Diana had a completely personalized gift basket just for you. As her daughter Nancy grew up, the gift basket switched from being full of coloring books to makeup, candles, and wine. These gifts were just an outward reflection of Diana's bubbly personality. Nancy told me that her mom was her best friend. She was a loving wife, aunt, grandmother, and sister. She was a woman who could just light up a room with her laugh that Nancy misses so much. Nancy said that whenever she was having a bad day, whether it was anxiety or work-related, or she was just in a funk, one phone call from her mom would make everything better. And a trip to Diana's house was welcoming, with the smell of banana bread, cookies, muffins, or any number of different things cooking in the oven. But it's not just Diana's friends and family who are feeling her absence. The Reno community has lost an advocate, someone who was always willing to help those in need, and they, along with Diana's family, have been robbed of a wonderful person, tragically taken from them by someone acting out in a fit of rage. I sat down with Diana's daughter, Nancy, who discusses her mom's tragic case and how losing Diana has affected everyone that knew and loved her. That conversation is coming up in just a moment. Hi, Nancy, and thank you for coming on The Murder of My Family to discuss your mom, Diana's case with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
I'm happy to have you here. I wish it was under different circumstances. Your mom's death was very tragic. It's been just 2 years since you lost her. And the whole story about what happened and who did it is something we're going to dive into. Before we do that, though, can you tell us a little bit about your mom?
Well, yeah, so not to sound super cliche, but she was my best friend. And she was a mom to anyone that met her, and a bunch of my friends going back to childhood, they would all just come over and call her mom, and she used to bake cookies, and our house was kind of the house to go to, you know?
The house where everyone liked to hang out, it sounds like.
Yeah, that was definitely our house. If any of the parents couldn't find their kids, they were like, they're probably at the house on the corner, and that was us.
Uh-huh. Your mom was living in this apartment complex in Reno.
Yes.
How long had she been there, and had she ever had any problems with anyone there?
She had been there, I want to say, almost 2 years. I believe she lived there with my dad and my little cousin too, and I want to say they moved in at the end of 2018.
Okay, so she had been there a couple of years. No problems with any neighbors, any run-ins with anyone?
No, ironically, the exact opposite. All of her neighbors, they were all pretty close.
Okay. And I want to go back to July 20th, 2020. There's this awful fire at the complex your mom lived in. The fire was pretty big from the sounds of it, from the reports. Lots of people were displaced. There were pets that died in the fire. How many apartments were affected total?
It was 8 total. There was 4 downstairs and 4 upstairs.
Okay, so this is pretty big. Now, were you in that area? Did you know about this fire or hear about it? How did you find out about the fire?
Yeah. So at the time, I was living in Carson City, which is about 20-25 minutes, I want to say south of Reno, but I'm pretty sure it's south. But it's like 25 minutes away. And what happened was I was planning to go meet my mom. We'd planned the day before. I was going to go take her grocery shopping. We did that like once a week or every other week together. And I told her if she hadn't heard from me by like 10, I believe it was 10 o'clock in the morning, to give me a call, and I'd wake up and then I would just get ready real quick and drive over. And my phone was having some technical difficulties. I later found out there was a faulty SIM card, so you could only call me on Wi-Fi. And my mom wasn't the most tech savvy person, so I had to walk her through what to do. And then we practiced when I got home to make sure she could figure it out. And that call never came, and I woke up to about 38 missed calls from my cousin. And she has a daughter, so my first initial thought was, what happened to the baby? Like, something's wrong. 38 missed calls isn't just, I'm trying to talk to you about something. 38 missed calls is something is wrong. So I call her back, and she was like, there's a fire at our parents' apartment, because my aunt and uncle lived in the apartment next to my mom. So, and she was like, everyone's at the hospital, but nobody can find your mom. And that was kind of that first, it all sunk in that I was like, is she actually gone? That was where my brain went. I was like, that she's gone. I don't know what happened. I thought it was like an electrical fire at first, but the fact that everyone else in my family was accounted for except my mom, I had that like gut feeling, and I just, it's like I sensed that she wasn't here anymore.
And I imagine there had to be a lot of chaos there. There's fire trucks, there's people all over the place.
Oh.
It must have been chaos.
Absolutely. I made a call to a friend who drove me to Reno, because I told her, I was like, something's going on. There's a fire in my apartment. There's a fire in my mom's apartment. I can't get a hold of her. I was calling her phone, and it was just straight to voicemail, straight to voicemail, straight to voicemail. So I was like, I need a ride. I can't drive. I'm freaking out. And she's like, yeah, I'll be right there. So she picked me up and drive me there, and the whole street's blocked off. So I just get out of the car and walk. And I saw the detectives and a couple of firefighters, and I told them who I was and what I was doing and I was looking for, and they couldn't give me any information at the time. And my heart's just racing. This is like probably a 45-minute time frame, but it feels like an eternity. I was hoping I would get a call from a hospital or something. I was hoping she was like unconscious and at the hospital and couldn't get a hold of me.
Which is in itself a bad enough situation, that you're hoping
Yeah, so
that
that's,
she's in the hospital.
yeah, that's where my dad and my little cousin and my aunt and uncle, because they all lived there as well. I think I'd mentioned that already. And my dad and my little cousin and my mom all lived in one apartment, and then my aunt and uncle were to their right. It was it was estimated around 5 a.m. is when this all started.
And was everyone asleep?
Yeah, it was a Monday morning, and to my recollection, everyone was asleep, and my little cousin had just like fallen asleep because he was working overnights at the time, so he had only been home a couple of hours, and he had just like went to bed, and he didn't know what he was watching TV, and then he went to bed, and then my aunt called my mom because she used to call and give her a wake up call in the morning, and that happened, and my mom, we don't know, she realized everything, but that was when my dad smelled something. He's like, something's on fire, and he goes to run, opens the door, and the whole side of the building is just swallowed in flames.
No. So right away, there's I'm imagining scrambling, trying to figure out how to get out. How did your cousin and your dad get out?
They jumped out of my mom and dad's bedroom window.
Okay. Was it really smoky and hard to see what was going on and hard to find your mom?
Yeah, from my dad opening the door, and at that early in the morning, no one's logically thinking. At first, I think he told me that he saw the garbage can, or there was something in the parking lot burning, so he opened his door to look. And then once he opened that door, the oxygen flow sucked everything in.
Yeah. I can imagine it was sort of like a little bomb going off in there, just setting everything on fire.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could hear, like, my little cousin he talked to me about it a lot too, and you would hear, like, he heard a couple of explosions, and we never really figured out what it was. I assumed, I acclimated to like the TVs and appliances and stuff like that, just from all the heat, them popping and stuff is what I assume it was.
Mm. And how long were you down there sort of in the aftermath waiting and trying to find out what was going on, trying to find out where your mom was? How long a process was that while you're trying to get some news?
That took from that whole day is kind of just a giant blur. I remember it as a never-ending day, but I think from the time I got to Reno until I found out that my mom had died was about 5 or 6 hours. And in that time, I went and found my dad, visited him at the hospital, and then I went to a different hospital because they sent everyone. No one went to the same hospital. My little cousin and my aunt and uncle went to one hospital, and then my dad was in another. So I went to find my dad first, talked to him. He was still like in shock. He didn't know everything that was going on. And then I went to the other hospital to see my little cousin and my aunt. My uncle, I couldn't see him right away, and I don't remember. I think he was still unconscious. I think he was still on the intubated and everything at the time when I was there.
Hmm. And so this is a quite a while. And then how were you told the news? Did the fire department or did the police come to you and tell you?
The detectives had told me when I first got there, they told me it was going to be a little while, and that because there was 2 people that hadn't made it out, and they were trying to figure out who was who. So they told me later and give it a few hours and to call the medical examiner, the Washoe County medical examiner office.
That had to be like eternity waiting to find out.
It was. Yeah. Minutes felt like hours.
Hmm. And then you finally did get the worst news. You had this feeling that your mom wasn't with you, you said early on, but now you had official confirmation that she was gone. How tough was that to get that news?
It was awful, especially based on where it was. It was almost like a dream. I wanted to wake up from, and I couldn't. I was in the ICU waiting room at the hospital to visit my little cousin, and that was when they finally got back to me because I had called and I left a message, and obviously they were busy, but she had called me back and was like, "Can you describe your mom to me?" So I did. I gave them her height, her hair color, and then she had a tattoo of my birthday on her left upper chest. So I used that as a marker to help them to confirm it. And that was when she was like, "Yes, I'm sorry to tell you this, but we have your mom here." And I let out I screamed and I just fell to the floor. For the first time in my life, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was too much, and I wanted it to not be real, but at the same time, I had a feeling, and my mom always told me from when I was little to like trust your instincts, trust your gut. If you feel it, you feel it. But there was just something about me giving her description and then confirming it that just made me realize it was all real and happening.
Mm. You're trying to process this news, and I'm assuming, but maybe not. Were you thinking that this was just an awful, tragic accident that happened?
Yes. Initially, that was where my brain went initially, because I don't know what else it would have been, because based on where the apartment was, it was super secluded. It was right off of the street, but almost if you didn't know about it, you'd blink and miss it because it was behind some houses. So it kind of hid. So that's what made me think it was an accident, because how could anything else happen with no one knowing exactly where it was? It was hard to get to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And just so you're thinking probably the most logical thing, this is just some electrical fire, or, somebody's cooking something along those lines. But
yeah,
eventually it became clear that this was no accident. How did you find out that this wasn't an accident, that someone had set this fire intentionally?
Well, when I found out was I looked at online, because there was people telling me that it was on the news, that I had already woken up to a few messages aside from my sister calling, but I called her back before I even did all this. So later on, and then I was looking at some of the videos from the news coverage, and I knew instantly once I saw the footage that there's no way that was electrical. I saw how big the flames were and how hot it was and how fast. Like, the whole building was gone in less than 10 minutes is what bystanders have told me that I've talked to, like the neighbors. The whole building was just gone. And an electrical fire to burn that hot, that fast, I was like, no, there's more to it. There's no way.
And then I guess the police eventually confirmed that for you?
Yeah. Eventually, it's pretty early on. It happened. I think it was that day or the next couple of days that they had confirmed it officially.
Yeah. And we talked about it. This was an extensive fire. It caused a lot of damage. People were injured. Pets were lost. Your mom, Diana, was killed, as was another woman named Catherine White.
Right.
So now that this was clear that this wasn't an accident, there was, someone had murdered 2 people and hurt a lot of other people. What was it to obviously this was tragic to begin with, but what was it like to find out that someone had intentionally done this to your mom?
It hurt. It was like a knife to my chest. Like, I couldn't breathe. Like, all my air was punched out of me. It was because my mom was the nicest person around. She would, and metaphorically and literally, take the shirt off your back and give it to you if you needed it. She was always there. She did everything for everyone. If you needed it, if she didn't have it, she figured it out and helped you. She was, for lack of a better term, she was a saint to a lot of people, friends and family that knew her.
It is this very tragic and senseless. You mentioned earlier that the police sort of zeroed in on the person that did this, a 31-year-old guy named Brian Bandy.
Yeah.
Was he someone that your family knew? Was he one of the tenants there, or what was his connection to that place, and why did he do this?
From my understanding, was he didn't have any connection to my family directly, but from my understanding, he was associated with one of the downstairs neighbors. They were acquaintances.
And did he have some kind of, in researching a little bit, I saw that he felt that there was some kind of conflict over money or something?
Yeah, and even to this day, it's still unclear to me, but that's what I was told too, that there was some conflict over money, like either he owed them or they owed him, and I'm unclear how much of that's factual and which side was which side. But from what I heard, it was a couple $100. And like I said, I don't remember which side owed to which side, but that's allegedly what led to all of this.
So he sets this fire and causes all this destruction and this loss of life over $400, which is what I saw reported, $400, but something very minimal. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. So did police arrest him pretty quickly? I know he abducted a woman that he lived with, forced her with a weapon or something to drive him around. How were they able to catch up with this guy and take him into custody?
That's a part of the story I really am happy about and blessed for, because I know there's plenty of people who, not just from your show, but from other shows that I watch, other podcasts I listen to, there's people that go years and years and decades and never know. But there was a guy who was dropping his wife off at the airport, which was relatively close to where the apartment was, and saw a smokestack and checked it out because curiosity got the better of him. And he saw a car driving the wrong way, away from the building, driving the wrong way at a high rate of speed. So he took it upon himself. He sensed that. He's like, something's not right about this. So he got on the phone with the police and told them the license plate and the direction it was going. And then the cops eventually met up with him and took over.
And you sort of mentioned it, that in a lot of cases that I cover, people are still searching for the person that took their family member from them for years. But you were fortunate enough to have a name and find out who this person was relatively early.
Absolutely.
And so obviously you've got to make, final arrangements for your mom. You've got to recover from this. You've got family that's injured that has to recover from all of this. And then now you've got the prospect of facing this person that did this in court. He wound up taking a plea deal, it looks like, and pleading guilty to the murders of your mom and Catherine White. Did he fight the charges at all, or did he accept responsibility?
So from my understanding, he accepted the responsibility and that pled guilty versus dragging it out and going to trial, which would have been extremely emotional, both for my whole family and especially my aunt, my uncle, my little cousin, my dad, that were all there firsthand and everything. And we're still waiting. We've gotten continuance after continuance on a sentencing date, and we're on number, I don't know now, 3, 4, maybe 5. And his attorney keeps, they're extending it, and to the circumstances, I'm not 100% sure. He just keeps asking for extensions to get his attorney. I think this last time he had switched attorneys. Okay. And the attorney needed time to do his research on the case and get all the facts and everything.
So I know it was spring of this year that he actually pled guilty, but the sentencing is what's holding everything up from you getting some kind of outcome here.
yeah, I believe there was something today on the day we're recording this, the 24th. I think they'd went to court, but I haven't heard anything yet. So I don't know if he just got, because today was supposed to be the day we get a sentencing date, and I haven't heard from the people that have been in contact with me to give me the dates. So I don't know if that got rescheduled or if there was a sentencing date given and no one's contacted me yet, but that was supposed to be today.
Mm. So this is really dragging on, and is it, you feel that it's sort of preventing you from healing, and not that anything will ever completely heal you, but it seems like you're stuck here in this same, zone or whatever, all this tragic stuff.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just in a constant loop because, as you said, I'll never stop grieving for my mom, for my best friend. She was there for me if I needed anything. She was a phone call away. And ironically, the day I got the news that I lost her, my first thought was to call her, and then it clicked. And I spent quite a few months when something good would happen, something bad would happen, I would pick up my phone and go to call her and forget and grieve all over again.
I know in maybe in one sense, him, pleading guilty sort of eliminates the hard part of a trial, but do you feel that maybe not having a trial, you won't get all the answers you're looking for?
Yeah, I do. I feel like there's pros and cons to a trial and not a trial. And part of me wishes there was one, just to further find out why. Like, why a few $100s took away my mom, and someone else's mom, grandma, you took two people with you over a few $100s. Like, was it worth it?
Has he ever shown any kind of remorse or reached out and expressed any kind of sorrow for what he did?
No, not to me and not to anyone in my family. Not that I've heard, and I'm sure someone would have told me, but he's never reached out or had his lawyer reach out and try to get in contact with us or anything. But no, in the couple times I've seen his court stuff online, like on Zoom and stuff, whenever there's a court thing, I'll jump in and see what's going on. But he's never really shown any remorse or said, hey, I'm sorry, I made a mistake that I can't take back, but I apologize.
Would that mean anything to you, or would it sort of be useless?
No, it would honestly be useless, and people could tell me that that's wrong, but no, he couldn't say sorry and apologize 100 times, but none of that's gonna give me my mom back. In one moment, you made a decision that took her away from the rest of. I was 26 at the time. I haven't lived my life yet. I'm getting married next year, and I'm not gonna have my mom there. He took a lot away from me, so I'm sorry isn't gonna cut it for me. And if anyone else in my family or my mom's friends, if they got a sorry and they wanted to move past it, they would, but it wouldn't mean anything to me. It would just be empty words.
Do you know what kind of sentence he is looking at? What kind of time he might get for this?
Yeah, from what I got from the last Zoom court date that I had seen, he was looking at 40 years for each victim. So for my mom and for Catherine White, he was looking at 40 years each at minimum.
I was just going to say, would that be like sort of on top of each other, or would they run concurrent at the same time?
At the same time, they'd run concurrently.
Okay. So he's got those, or I guess, are the most serious charges, obviously the murder charges, but then he's also got all these other related ones, I guess, with the fire and everything.
Yeah.
He's 30 something years old. So if he does a full 40 years, at the very least, he would be in his 70s when he got out.
Yeah.
Which,
but he would do from my understanding is it was 40 for each, so he's looking at 80 years minimum.
Okay, so that...
Yeah, 40 for each victim.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if that was the case and he could technically get out when he was 70, that would only be like 20 years older than your mom was when she died, which would definitely just seem very unjust. So I hope whatever happens with the sentencing, you have some kind of peace from it. Everyone that was displaced by that fire has to rebuild and replace what they lost in the fire, but you and your family can't really do that. You can't replace your mom.
Right.
How tough have these last 2 years been for you and your family without her? I know you mentioned that she was your best friend and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What is it you missed most about your mom at this point?
I miss just the fact when I would leave, if I would leave her house, she would always make sure I left with a bag of groceries. Even if I didn't need them, she was like, "Here, take this." And she would text me when I'd leave, she would be like, "Don't forget to call me when you get home. I won't go to sleep until I know you're home." And one time I forgot and I fell asleep and I woke up to like 30 text messages. "Hello, are you home? You better not be dead. Hello, call me." And I was like, "Oops." Oh man, that was rough.
Well, it's like the mom things that many of us maybe take for granted. Those little things that were, sometimes they seem like they're being a pain in the butt, but it's just because they care about you.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of those. Like my mom and I, one of our things was we would go out to lunch twice a month. No matter how busy our schedules got, we'd go out to lunch twice a month, either lunch or an early dinner. And we would go, my dad would drop us off and pick us up because we'd go have a couple drinks. And every time I would order a drink, they'd ask for my ID. And my mom would go, "Hey, when they ask your daughter for her, you're old when your daughter's old enough to drink." And I was like, "Mom, stop saying that. It's embarrassing. They're going to think my ID is fake with the way you stop. And every time, you're getting old when your baby's old enough to drink." And I used to want to just crawl under the table and hide. But like now, I'd give a kidney just to hear it one more time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like those kind of things that, once they're gone, you look back on them and appreciate and be happy to have again.
Absolutely.
Well, this 2 years you've been fighting through this and waiting for the final outcome on what the justice system provides you. I'm curious what advice you'd have for someone who maybe lost a loved one, under similar circumstances, and maybe it just happened recently. What advice would you offer them on how to get through something like this?
I would just tell them that it's going to be hard at first, but you got to remember, if you give up, they wouldn't want you to give up. You've got to keep fighting and pushing and trying. And just because their life ended so abruptly and so tragically doesn't mean yours has to end with them. They would want you to move on. That's how I am able to get out of bed every day. But there's days that I don't want to. But then I'm like, my mom would be mad at me. She would cry for a little bit, get up and live your life while you got it, because life's short. And that's the definition of it, Yeah.
So basically just, you think of what your mom would tell you, what advice she'd give you.
Exactly. And just, I don't like to use the term, it gets better, because it doesn't, but it gets easier almost, because as time progresses, and it's still so recent, but I'm going to always carry this grief. But as time progresses, I've learned how to carry on, and everything gets slightly easier. It's not better, and it's never going to be the same. I'm not the person I was when I had my mom. I've changed. It's life altering. But at the same time, she wouldn't want me to just lay in bed and give up.
That sounds like really good advice, because the mothers would tell us, I can hear my mom telling me, you've got to keep going and stuff. And, I assume that's sort of what you experience too. And they say time heals all wounds. I know that's a sort of a cliche, but yeah, I don't know if that's true, but maybe with the passage of time, life without your mom will become a little easier for you as you go. And again, I'm hoping that you do get a just outcome with the sentencing when it finally does happen.
Absolutely, and so do I. And I honestly think that's a big part of what I'm still hanging on to, and why it's almost like I feel stagnant. Like I don't want to move forward because I don't want to feel like I'm leaving my mom in the past. But at the same time, I've got goals and dreams and things I want to do, and I think I've already mentioned it, but I'm getting married next year in fall next year, and my mom's gonna miss it, but she would want me to go on, and I hope one day if I get the privilege to be a parent, like I want to be just a fraction of the mom she was. And every time I tell any of my friends and my family that knew her, they're like, "You're gonna be fine. Look at the mom you had. There's no way you could be a bad mom." But it was just with how close her and I were and everything, I feel like I have really big shoes to fill someday. And she always wanted to be a grandma, and she was taken before she got the chance. And it hurts because her mom died before I was born. Really, like soon before. Her mom died in October of 92, and I was born in September of 93. So before she hit that first year, she found out she was pregnant and had a baby. So and unfortunately now that's my life. So my kids won't know their grandma physically, just like I never knew mine. And I always tell everyone it's a cycle I intend on breaking.
Yeah. And hopefully you pay forward some of what you had with her in with your children.
Absolutely. That would definitely be my goal. And I think about it, and all just little things she used to do for me. She cut my sandwiches into little shapes. And this was the 90s. They didn't have all those sandwich cutters they have now. She would hand cut like an elephant or a giraffe or whatever animal I wanted into my sandwiches for school. She would take that time and make it mine, and just, I don't know anyone else who would have done that. I don't think I can do that. I'm not that crafty. My mom was quite crafty, and she used to make dresses. She made like her prom dress and her wedding dress and all sorts of stuff. She was just that kind of crafty person.
Oh, well, just being that creative, maybe you'll find something special that you can do with your kids that sort of honors her memory.
Absolutely. And even though, like I said, even though her mom died before I was born, I feel like I know her because my mom fed me stories and told me all about her. And now that's something I'll do with my kids, even though they won't get to physically meet her because she was taken from us. I will tell them all about her, and I hope that feel like they know her like I did too with my grandma.
No. Well, that's a very positive message and a good way to end this. And Nancy, I want to thank you for coming on to talk about your mom and sharing her story with us. And again, I hope that you do get the justice that your mom deserves.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It means a lot.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. I'd like to thank Sunny Landon for writing and research assistance in this episode. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.